Welcome to the Boardroom. I'm Gold-Onwude. I'm here with Gina Prince-Bythewood, the writer and director of Love and Basketball, the legendary and award-winning movie. How are you, Gina?
I'm very good, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm stoked to be sitting here with you because, like so many, Love and Basketball has meant so much to me as a hooper. You know, Gina, this film was released in April 2000. And it's 20 years later, and it still resonates. Why?
Seriously, I wish I knew, because I would bottle it and put it in every one of my movies. It's like, when I think about how hard it was to get this movie made and how much I struggled with the script and telling the stories, it's half autobiographical. To be, starting from that point and being here 20 years later talking about it is still phenomenal to me. And I wish I knew I connected so much, but I like to hope and think that it's because of the truth that I put into it.
The truth, and also you mentioned it's part of your personal story. It's your first film you wrote. Can you tell me what parts of it is actually inspired by your own personal truth?
Yeah. Monica is no doubt me. That was me on the court. Just like I'm still shy, but on the court, I'm a different person. It felt like on the court or on the track, I could be my true self and let my emotions show and be aggressive and leave it all out on the floor. All the things that girls are told not to do. You're told to be quiet and not be heard and don't mess up your knees but on the court I could be who I felt I truly was. And but with that, so many times I was called a tomboy and told that who I was and what I loved, which was sports, like that there was something wrong with me or I was different. So to kind of grow up like that, kind of jacked up my self-esteem a bit. But as I said, on the court, on the track, I just felt different, and I felt like that was my truth. And so much of Love and Basketball was, my hope to just reframe what it means to be a female, and that all these things that made me who I was, normalize those for other girls who I knew were going through the same thing.
Dang, it was almost like a part diary a little bit.
Yeah, and so Monica is certainly me. My first kiss was, we counted. I did 10 seconds in my life where we counted on our fingers. But like, it's so fun to be able to put stuff like that in. I was at UCLA, so all the experience of what I went through, I ran track at UCLA. So the things I went through with my coach, going from being a star in high school to suddenly being, at the bottom, all of a sudden having to fight, just the life that we had in the dorms, the parties, the suites, it was just fun. And the music, when I put the music together, that was me digging in my crates and pulling up the mixtapes I had from college, the cassettes, and being able to put all that into the movie as well.
I appreciate all that you poured into it, because every single one of those details, I know hoopers like me, it wasn't even just hoopers that loved it, but everybody, we can remember the little details that stood out, or, what Monica looked like in that scene, or how, she kept her hands on her chest, or she was, a little awkward at times, or when she first put on a dress, all those details we remember, and we remember the lines. To take it back, the movie was released in 2000. Mm-hmm. It was set in the 1980s. Yeah. But a lot has changed since then, or evolved since then, just as far as like women's equity issues, women in sports, Title IX evolution. Let's say Love and Basketball was being written for 2020, 20 years later. Mm-hmm. How did your approach change?
You know what? It is an absolute different time than it was when I was coming up, but I still see the same things happening in women's sports. There is still inequity, and obviously we see that women's soccer is having right now, even WNBA and NBA, and just comments that you still hear where our sports are not as exciting or as good or as necessary as men's sport. And, women are still pushed, into cheerleading. That's the female ideal. as opposed to athletes, which I think should be the female ideal. So I feel like the story would still be the same, and that push, that I believe in, and really the theme of it is that women should have it all. You can have love and you can have career. I mean, I'm fortunate to have both. My career is obviously filmmaking now and not sports, but the fact that women should and could have it all.
Thank you for that, because it's actually something that the way that movie ended is something that gives hope, and something that I've held on to. But can I play devil's advocate?
Sure.
Have you ever considered that maybe the way that love story ended could have been different, and maybe Quincy and Monica didn't work out because they had to overcome a lot, and especially when she went to Europe and he had a whole fiance and all she had to do was play him for his heart?
No, it's that true love. I will say one thing. I have one regret with the film.
What's the reason?
And that is I cut a scene out of the film because of time. And if I could go back and put that scene in, I absolutely would. And it was a scene between Tyra Banks's character and Omar Epps, Quincy. They're in their fly crib on Venice Beach, beautiful spot. And he had gotten hurt and he was talking to her about wanting to go back to school. And she shuts it down like, nah, I'm with an athlete. You're a ball player. This is our path. And you saw, then he goes and talks to Monica and she's encouraging of that change. And because she knows him, because deep down, she still loves him. So it showed the difference between the two women and who was right for him. And I think it would have given just even more justification. But I still, again, believe in true love and that they were in love at age, 11. And as she said, that shit just never went away, and it didn't go away for both of them despite everything that happened. And so it was finding their way back to each other and knocking down all those obstacles that were keeping them apart.
Cheers to true love and young love lasting. Ooh. Okay. And so you have already said Monica Wright was you.
Mm-hmm.
The person playing the role was Sanaa Lathan.
Yeah, Sanaa.
And Sanaa, it was super flying in the role, and she wasn't your first choice. And she's been really publicly vocal that, hey, the audition process and even filming it, she used the words, was miserable for her at times because what you wanted to do was cast an actual basketball player.
Yeah.
So she took a lot of pain from that whole time. What did it take for you to eventually trust each other? And was there ever a moment in filming where you eventually said she was the right choice?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Sanaa and I are great friends now. So, it's weird. We're able to laugh about that time, but we also grew so much. That was my first movie. That was her first lead. And the audition process was absolutely grueling for her, but also for me. It was like, I just went into it saying I would never cast somebody in that role. No way. Anytime, especially back then, and even sometimes now, where you see women in sports on film or TV and they're whack, it just sets us back. And I was never going to be a part of that. So Sanaa had done a reading of the script for the Sundance program, where she's just sitting on stage and reading. So it didn't matter that she couldn't play ball. And she was so great. And I could not get that performance out of my head. But when it came time to actually cast the film, I was like, there's no way she can do it. She's never picked up a ball in her life. So unbeknownst to me, she started training with her brother. So with the auditions, the actresses had to do two things. They had to read with me, and then if they were good enough with that, then they had to get on the court. And to a T, every single one said they could ball. And then they get on the court, it's like, nah, y'all get
right.
So it knocked out everybody. And it came down to, again, Sanaa's performance just locked in my head, and her chemistry with Omar. They did a chemistry read, and it was, ridiculous. And of course, I didn't know they were dating at the time, which, helped the chemistry. But, and then the other person that it got down to was between Sanaa and this woman named Nisha Butler. And
What?
Nisha,
I personally know Nisha Butler. That
you know
was
Nisha? Yeah, so Nisha, was the top ball player in New York, and
yeah.
she had done modeling, and Spike had actually recommended her to me. So I met her. She auditioned. She was pretty good. She obviously could ball, and she had pretty good chemistry with Omar. So I had those two, and this is after seeing 700 people. So Sanaa,
Who were other hoopers that auditioned?
well, what happened is, for the lead of Monica, um, it was all actresses except for, Marion Jones. I read she was like my hero back before, you
Mhm.
know, the steroid stuff. God, there were a couple players that had ended up in the WNBA, and I am blanking. I ended up reading a bunch of them for the smaller roles, but for Monica, knowing how big the role was, there was only a couple. Um, but yeah, so with Nisha, I got Nisha an acting coach, and Sanaa had a basketball coach, and they were on these parallel tracks. There was no guarantee for a part, and they both did that for a couple months, and I could not make a decision. Back and forth, couldn't make a decision. And then her dad, Sanaa's dad, called me, who was one of my mentors, Stan Lathan, and he said, "What you're doing is cruel and abusive, and make a decision." And he was right. But again, it was like my first one, and I knew I had to get it right. And Spike was telling me, "You got to go with the ball player." And so finally, my husband is the one that said it. He asked me, is this a love story or a basketball story? And I really thought about it, and then realized it's a love story set in the world of basketball. And I could fake a jump shot, but you can't fake a close up, and I have to go with the actress. So, uh, I decided to go with Sanaa, and I was told that my movie was doomed. I go with the actress, but there was some about Sanaa. But don't get me wrong, even though I called her and said you got the part, and again, we laugh about it, but she was like, I sounded like, yeah, you got it. Like, no excitement, no nothing. It was like I had no choice but to give it to her. But she said that just fueled her in terms of, okay, you don't believe in me, I'm going to prove it. And I mean, Sanaa, in addition to those 2 months since she got the part, she trained another 3 months every single day. And like killed herself for it. And I had hired a basketball double for her. But in the movie, I used the double for 2 shots total in the entire movie. Like Sanaa, that's how hard she worked. And the good thing is she's got that thing, like,
Yeah.
that's not just that you could play, you got to look like a baller, and she had the height, and she had the swagger, and she had the
She
look.
had the mannerisms.
Yeah, but in shooting, it wasn't until we shot. We were both really scared of the game she plays against Ed Crenshaw in high school when she loses the game. I just didn't know how she was going to be, because that was the first basketball thing we shot, and she did good, and I was like, okay, I think we're okay. And at that point, um, things got better, but it wasn't until the editing room after shooting where I realized, damn, she is a dope actress. I mean, Sanaa really is next level, and to see everything that she brought to that character, and I think, as she has said, that the toughness of and how grueling the process was to get the part kind of fueled her embodiment of the character, because Monica is someone who's trying to prove herself and being told she's not good enough.
So do you feel that the script was just so great that whoever was in that role would have shined, or was there something just spectacular about what Sanaa did with the role?
I mean, yes, I would love to think the script is the best factor, but no, my husband and I went and saw Love and Basketball on Valentine's Day. The ArcLight actually put it up on the big screen, and we hadn't seen it on the big screen in years, and so, and I think it was the scene. I think it was the scene on the bleachers at SC where she leaves Quincy because of curfew. And my husband and I turned to each other at the exact same moment. We're like, damn, she's dope. I mean, Sanaa made the movie.
Yeah.
She absolutely did. She brought something special to that character.
Credit to her. You mentioned though that Spike Lee was in your head. He was in your ear. Like, we need a real Hooper. You went a different direction. Besides that decision, Spike Lee was also a producer, one of the producers on the film. What was his impact on it, and how much was He Got Game an influence as well?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, the thing I have to say for my first film, I was really blessed because I did not have producers, Spike or the studio hanging over me. They really left me alone. Once the casting was the biggest deal, and when I went with Sanaa instead of Nisha, and again, Nisha was great, and we're still friends to this day. So but when I went that way, I had that was my vision and my choice, and he couldn't say much about that. But I think the benefit of having Spike was that it was my first movie, and Mike DeLuca at New Line. I have to believe he felt if I started screwing up on set, that Spike could swoop in and save me. But thankfully, I knew what I was doing, and they really did leave me alone. And I only got one note on the movie from the studio.
What was that?
That was they felt that they watched the dailies of the love scene the first time that they have sex, and they thought Sanaa was not enjoying it. And I was like, yeah, time is not that great. But that was the only note I got.
Yeah. Okay. I want to move along to the cast a little bit. I mean, it was star-studded.
Yeah.
People weren't quite the big-time celebrities they would later become, but I mean, you had Omar Epps, Tyra Banks, Gabrielle Union, Regina King, Boris Kodjoe. I'm just naming a few. What was it like to be director and manage that many celebrities?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing. None of them were celebrities at the time. The biggest celebrity, well, really Omar and Alfred. And Omar, I was allowed to cast Sanaa because I had said when I got the gig that I wanted to find an unknown for Monica. And Mike DeLuca had a New Line said, if you get Omar Epps to play Quincy, then you can do that. And that was great because Omar was my first choice. He was the man, then, and I knew he was athletic, and I just dug his work, and he came aboard quick. So that was exciting. And Alfred Woodard, I was so scared of Alfred. Like, Alfred is Alfred, and it was my first movie. I was scared to talk to her. I'm like, I'm like the director. But she was mad cool. And, it's funny because when we met the first time, sat down, she said she would do the movie if I played Monica. And she said, I could tell that this is you. And I thought about it for like 5 minutes, and I was like, nah, I can't do the love scenes. Like, I felt like I could do everything else, but I couldn't do the love scenes. So, but I said, I promise I'm going to find, a great Monica. So, those two were the stars. But other than that, like Boris Kodjoe and Regina Hall, Gabrielle, that was her first movie. Regina Hall, it's funny because I saw The Best Man, and I was like, wow, she's really good. And I called Malcolm. I was like, wow, you found a stripper who could act. That's how good she was. I thought she was a real stripper. But she wasn't. And I was like, okay, she is really good. So, cast her. And thank God, because she and Sanaa were really good friends already. So that really fueled their relationship as sisters. And I think it shows up on screen. And so it's fun to see all these folks doing big things now, and knowing that, they were all together in my film as the first film.
Gina, you mentioned Gabrielle Union, who you said she was kind of at the beginning of her career. When you think about the catalog that she has now, I mean, just incredible and so impressive. Was she definitely, like, when she auditioned, how did that come out for her ability to be Shawnee, which was even though it wasn't the big role, it's a memorable role.
That's the thing. Like, there are no small parts. Like, I remember her audition. I was like, oh yeah, like she's Shawnee. She had auditioned for Monica, but it was like, okay, I don't think you're quite Monica, but there's this other role. And thankfully it wasn't like, oh, it's not the lead, I'm not going to do it. She was like, cool. And as I said, she brought that thing.
Awesome. What did this film do for you personally and professionally?
Hmm. Wow. Personally, I don't know, it was such incredible validation to write the script and spend a year and a half writing it, and the struggle that that took, because again, I was writing it, no one was paying me to write it, no one asked me to write it, and so I had to keep believing in myself and believing that someone would want to see this story, because anytime I got stuck, I would just, the negativity would come in, and who's going to want to see this movie about a little black girl who wants to be the first girl in the NBA? Like, no one's checking for that. But having the belief in it, be so strong and be so passionate about the story, and then to finish it and go out with it and have every single studio turn it down, was so crushing. And I just felt like, wow, I just spent a year and a half of something that I believe in so much and nobody cares. Like that was really tough. So to go from that to it then coming out in theaters, and I remember two screenings in particular. Our first preview screening we did in Crenshaw. It's now Magic Johnson Theaters, but back then Magic hadn't bought it yet. But obviously we shot the film in LA, and we used Crenshaw High School, and we used real players from it. And so to have that first screening, packed house in Crenshaw, like it was so raucous. And that was the first audience I'd showed it to at all. And like, it was just a magical night, because it was like the excitement was palpable, it was just such an incredible feeling. And knowing who I made it for, like I made it for us, and it was so embraced. So the one thing I do, the one thing I do remember is there came the part where Quincy, he has a breakup with his dad. His dad walks out and he sits down and he starts to cry, and some guy in the audience yelled out, "Bitch!" And the audience went nuts. But it's all good. And then Sundance. So the film got into Sundance and premiered at Sundance. And that was at the Eccles Theater, 1,300 people, 99% white audience. And I was like, I wonder how this is going to go. And so screen the film, the movie ends, and I'm not lying, dead silent. And I remember in my head, I said, well, I guess they didn't get it. Like, it was just such a weird thing. And then suddenly they erupted and we got a standing ovation. And then when they called Sanaa up on stage, like people went nuts. And I was just so excited for her and excited for me. And again, it just felt like validation. And the fact, as I said, that we're sitting here talking 20 years later still blows my mind. And it absolutely kickstarted my career. And every job I've gotten, every film I've gotten, the people that have hired me have referenced that film. So that's why I think it's so important that your first film reflects you, and that it's a story that you feel like only you can tell, because it certainly told Hollywood who I was about.
Mm-hmm. This love story transcends. I mean, certainly it talks basketball, it's love, it's Black life, it's culture, it's LA, it's a certain time, it's women's sports, it's equity conversations. I mean, it's so many things in one, and you got that right on your first try. So what is the next step like when you've had a mega hit in your first film and now you're trying to follow that up?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. And I do want to, I'll answer that. It's like, I do want to give praise. I have to, my better half, Reggie Rock. He was in it with me for that year and a half, and would not let me go out with the script until it was really good. And that is really hard, especially for a husband. When I've written a whole year and I think it's great, and then he says, nah, it's not ready yet, and here's some notes, I'm getting an attitude, but he was brave enough to give me those notes and push me to make it better, and keep pushing and keep pushing, and to have that behind me, and for Monica to be so reflective of me, and Quincy, all the amazing things about my husband are put into the good things of Quincy, and the things that he struggled with his life and his father. As I said about putting truth into your work, like I was so grateful to what he brought to the script as well. So and now of course I forgot your question. Sorry.
Just following up on that first mega hit.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, you would Hollywood smack me on the side of the head. It was like my next film. I mean, I did that in 2000. My next film was Secret Life of Bees in 2008. It's like you look up and it's 8 years later, like what happened. And that happens to so many female filmmakers, and sure as hell the Black female filmmakers. That second film is hard to get. And I had developed two things in between them. So it wasn't like I was not doing anything, but I developed two different movies that didn't end up going. It is really tough. But once Secret Life of Bees hit, then now I've just, I'm in a very good place in my career where I get to choose some really dope stuff. And but I still, I still love writing and directing the best.
What advice would you give to writers on being able to put that idea to paper? I mean, I'm sure it's a lot easier than it sounds. I'm sorry, it's not as easy as it sounds.
No, writing is so hard. It's so hard. It's so lonely. And you just like, it's such a leap of faith again that somebody's gonna care about something that's in your head. It's so hard, and it's painful for me. I write to direct. I love directing so much. So I write to have scripts for me to direct. But when you direct what you've written, it's beautiful because it's all your vision. So I just have a couple tricks that I need. I mean, foremost, it has to be something I'm passionate about, because you'll get so many no's when you're going out there trying to sell it. What I've learned is you need just one yes, and that's what fuels me. But what keeps me in the fight is that every story that I've done is a story I've had to tell. Love and Basketball, Secret Life of Bees, Beyond the Lights, like had to tell this story. But music is such a huge part of my process, and every script I've written, I've put together a playlist, and it's songs that just inspire me to sit down and write, songs that open me up emotionally to what I'm writing. The whole third quarter of Love and Basketball was Lauryn Hill X Factor on repeat. Like, I love that song so much, and I wanted to write something that made me feel the way that song makes me feel. Like, that song wrecks me. And so it was just, as I said, on repeat, and you get to a place where you're just writing to those feelings. And music is such a beautiful part of the process, and absolutely can inspire your writing.
You mentioned being a Black woman writer, producer, director. I read a piece you wrote about representation, and obviously you're advocating for more. And it's not just about the actors. Like, what can we do to help let there be more Black and female writers, producers, and directors in Hollywood?
Yeah, it is. I cannot tell you the anger I have that there are so few of us having the opportunity to tell our stories, because we know how dope we are. We know that there are so many great writers and directors out there that are not getting the opportunities. And the fact that the majority of our stories and characters are told from someone else's perspective, and honestly a white perspective, like is so wrong. And that's why you see so many of the same stereotypes popping up in movies, and you see us as the sidekick or the best friend or the jokey person. Like, when do we get to be at the front of it, having a full arc and a full story and real emotions? I mean, I cannot tell you, one, in writing for television before I got into film, every single show that I worked on, you know, you start the season and you put up arcs for each character, and every time there was a Black character, their arc, I'm not lying, included a sibling on drugs or a parent on drugs. That was their story. That's the thing that they kept going back to every single time. So when you watch TV and you wonder why, it's because most of them, like, they don't have any Black folks in their circle, so they are writing based on what they've seen other people write, and that's all coming again from stereotype, where we're writing ourselves as we see ourselves. We are, like, we're so different and diverse, and so the fight is to get more of us in positions. And so for me, my thing is, I've gotten through the door. It is absolutely my responsibility to hold that door open and reach back and pull people up. So, you know, Lena Waithe was my assistant for 2 years, and she asked me if I could read her script, and I was like, oh God, I hope it's good, because it's going to be really awkward. And it was good. You saw her potential, and she's a hustler, and she worked so hard and would take notes and work hard and give me a new draft and give me a new draft. So that inspired me to want to help her. Tina Mabry, I saw her film, and I was like, damn, how did she get that independent film made? Called her, reached out, and helped her get another movie. You know, Issa Rae, I watched Awkward Black Girl when it was a web series. I was like,
yeah, me too.
It was like, who is doing this? Like, this is making me laugh. And so, you know, reached out and invited her to talk. And so, like, that's my responsibility, but it's also exciting to find those and see those new voices, and do my best to help elevate. So I hope I elevate, one, by example about the work that I put into the world, that I work so hard at it. Because when you get this opportunity, you have to be good, because people are not looking to give you second chances when you fail. And then, as I said, we got to reach back and pull others up.
Thank you for reaching back. Thank you for giving us art, giving us something to hold on to for the culture.
Yeah.
Your movie means so much to me. And I really try never to gush during interviews, but just thank you so much. And thank you.
It means a lot.